Welcome to the Gus Alva Perspective, a videocast that embraces the philosophy of gratitude and abundance over the mindset of fear and scarcity. Being a distinguished member of the American Psychiatric Association, it's important to oftentimes parlay data or information, inspiration, and medical backdrops to everyone. And the theme that I'd like to touch on today is that of being an ambassador. You might think this is sort of an odd topic, but being an ambassador doesn't necessarily just apply to somebody that is representing one's country in another country. Being an ambassador literally is something that could be an endeavor that covers any and all fields. Let me talk more about that. Uh, the role of an ambassador is a great responsibility. There's a fair amount of influence associated with having an ambassadorial role. It requires diplomacy, tact, and a deep understanding of the matter at hand. Now, keep in mind, we're not just talking about values and objectives, but we're talking about an endeavor. And ultimately, the way in which I want to utilize the term ambassador is tied into whichever endeavor is being represented. Let me share with you that. A dear friend of mine actually taught me this particular presence or point of view. The essence of ambassadorship is an interesting concept. It carries a great degree of significance because it's a role of additional responsibility, because it fosters and promotes an understanding and a collaborative appreciation of whatever endeavor is being followed. Now, this could actually be a professional endeavor. It could be a recreational endeavor. So it's not just about vocation and recreation, but it could also be about modeling certain things. In the context of which I'm speaking about right now, taking the context, maybe a healthier lifestyle. As doctors, we oftentimes advocate for appropriate hydration, appropriate nutrition, appropriate physical as well as mental activity. And in tying in with that physical activity, you could think of an ambassadorship as being able to introduce somebody to something that you have a particular proclivity for. In other words, you're well in tune with that. I'm going to take into context here the concept of cycling or riding a bike. And although riding a bike might sound like a very mundane exercise, I think that we can all reflect back on being a kid and remembering how to balance and maybe falling a few times and feeling scared over the whole point of being on two wheels and not necessarily having full control. But once we were able to do that, if you want to hop on a trail and do a mountain biking trail, for example, or you want to go out on the road and maybe go cycling with other people, there's certain rules that are unstated that need to be followed so as to be able to maintain safety, not only for the individual exerting the overall endeavor, but also for the other people around that particular person. So cultivating ambassadorial skills is a way of effectively communicating what the endeavor is all about. So coming back to the whole point of cycling, the person that is in front of a peloton, which is basically a line of individuals that are riding together, is oftentimes tasked with making sure that they point out what's coming up on the road. If there's any type of like sharp object, or there's maybe some sort of debris on the road or otherwise. And that individual is not only keeping the rhythm and pace and the velocity associated with the entire group of people that are following, but they're also trying to point out potential areas of danger. And it's important that, as one picks up certain experiences, that those experiences then get shifted over to other individuals. And this is a great example of not only first learning through effective communication, but also cultivating competency and then subsequently being able to share that same competency. Building a strong alliance or a thought process associated with, well, why should we be doing these things? It's finding common ground for mutual benefit and addressing whatever conflict might come about with constructive solutions. Like, for example, if the individual at the front of the peloton now gets tired, they can basically make a motion and then have somebody else actually slot in, because it turns out that if you're following somebody and you're drafting behind them, you're exerting 30% less energy than the individual that's actually in front of you. So there's a whole rationale associated with this. And there's a need for a mastery associated with cultivating that strong sense of ambassadorial skills and then building that strong alliance. The other important thing is advocacy and promotion, right? Because once you've enjoyed something because of having gained mastery over it, you're going to want to communicate and craft, again, the purpose and the value for that particular endeavor to other individuals. You're going to be sharing that same zeal. And, a maintenance of integrity is really important, because through transparency and accountability and honesty, you're able to now share additional tidbits of information to people. This extends beyond a cycling endeavor out on the road. It also carries over to, like, say, a mountain bike trail. And having the technical skills, knowing how to lean into the bike, knowing when to actually pivot and move the seats associated with it. And I'm just giving one example of one particular endeavor, but the whole point of ambassadorship is really an interesting concept here, because I'm tying it into athletic endeavors. But being an ambassador of an endeavor is genuinely a privilege that requires continuous learning. It requires adaptability and a genuine commitment to that endeavor's values. And it might not just be that whole point of cycling. The same individual that actually, had me really think about this whole ambassadorial point of view, is somebody that, is always thirsting for additional areas of knowledge. And I love that, because when you surround yourself with people that want to equip themselves with knowledge and skills and a mindset necessary to be able to navigate the complexities of being a successful ambassador, that really carries the day, because you can apply this concept to any area of life. And the whole point here is gaining a mastery and then passing on that mastery, not being selfish, not being egotistical, but having the decency and the transparency and the honesty to then be able to share that zeal that you've now developed and carry it over. I guess part of the reason by which I'm tying this in right now is that, because of these ambassadorial skills, now I've actually been brought into another interesting endeavor, which is high intensity interval training. And I'll tell you, you kind of rue the moment in which you start out a new endeavor, but then subsequently, once you actually gain a bit more mastery about it, you feel a sense of desire to share that with other people and convey that. And the whole point of being an ambassador, again, carries over in so many different ways. Another great example, a dear cousin taking me out scuba diving and reminding me of the reason why I enjoyed that particular endeavor. And for those of you that have never done something like this, to be able to scuba dive, you obviously have to have a lot of rules set in mind. You have to have learned a lot of different skill sets. And obviously, you can't be fooling around. You need to be there with a buddy. And there's a whole reason behind that, because, your life could be in jeopardy if you do something wrong. But the point here, again, is that ambassadorial spirit is ultimately what helps in propelling us. And the sense of gratitude that I have in sharing this with you is that I'm sure that you too will have some sort of endeavor that you're going to want to share, and you will be that ambassador to someone else, so as to then have them feel the same degree of passion and enjoyment that you get out of that particular endeavor. I thank you for joining us on the Gus Alba Perspective on this point of being an ambassador.